As human beings, we all demonstrate actions that require an inward approach upon reflection. Oftentimes, it is in that time of reflection that we encounter our truest selves. We are met with a rationale in our decision making and, of course, a consequence to those very same decisions. But I tell you that everyone will have to give account on the day of judgment for every empty word they have spoken. Matthew chapter 12, verse 36. Welcome everyone to Chronicles with Stephie. Think of a word, a positive word, and it may just be a chronicle shared in this space. Let's make life more meaningful. Hello! Welcome back to Chronicles with Stephie. Welcome back to this podcast. And of course, this space on the internet where we're just creating to make life a little bit more meaningful over here. I hope you all have been good, because I will not tell you a lie right now. I've been really, really, really good. And I'm just excited to be back, and I hope today's chronicle, is something that you are interested in. So if you are, continue to listen, or if you just enjoy listening to my voice, let's get into today's accountability episode. Chronicles with Stephie, Accountability Chronicles. Now, where did the mindset develop that it's never us, it's always them, whoever them is? Like where? Oh, it's never us, it's always them. Who's the them? That quote unquote, we're never the problem. Again, it's them. How far-fetched a thought to exist that as human beings, we are void of causing behaviors, enacting behaviors that require an internal check. 99% of the time, we are the problem. Ooh. Do I even want to continue? 99% of the time, we are the problem because we haven't learned to forgive and let go, or even keep the peace, along with a plethora of other characteristics that we ought to be practicing daily, but we rather conform to what's easy versus what is right. I hope that's the most replayed component of this little video. Now, the term accountability stems from the word accountable, and it simply means to be held responsible for one's actions or duties. Hence, accountability is more or less on an individual basis rather than that of a collective. Now, a blame game culture exists in our human experience. From what I would need, a blame game culture exists, where we oftentimes see or hear individuals usher their own responsibility onto someone else. So true. They don't want to shoulder the burden of their own actions, and using someone else as quote unquote a scapegoat because it seems all too easy to do is such a common practice. Personally, I think that's fraud behavior. Honestly, I think that's fraud behavior. I think if you're not standing on 10 toes, whereas you know that you have demonstrated a certain behavior and you feel it, I don't know how you process that in your intellect, that you're going to allow somebody else to shoulder that burden for you. I think that's fraud behavior. If you commit an act, hear me out, if you commit an act, good, bad, or indifferent, it's yours. You are the one who did it. And I highly think that we should own our actions despite the expected or unexpected outcome, because it's more important to be authentic. It's far more valuable to be authentic rather than to be a fraud. If we are sincere from the initial get-go, from the jump, from that initial stage where we know we did what we did. So if we are sincere from the initial stage in the actions that we demonstrate, if we're truthful, if we are just, then we truly don't have to fear the consequences of our own actions or duties now, do we? Don't get me wrong, sometimes you do things in a split decision and then afterwards the repercussions or the consequence of that behavior, it eludes you because you're like, whoa, no, this was really, this was like a quote unquote one-off. This was like in the spur of a moment. And I get that. I think that's why it's our responsibility as well to develop emotional intelligence, to understand that in in every situation that we may encounter and experience as individuals, it is so important to try to remain calm. And I know sometimes it may be very difficult because we're human beings. We invoke several emotions: happiness, anger, sadness, joy, peace, love, you name it. So sometimes I know it's very difficult to remain calm in situations that truly drive us over the edge. But it's practicing and developing that habit that those split second decisions won't have such negative consequences or repercussions of our actions, if you understand what I'm saying. My grandma, I love her so much. Like, she had this saying before she passed. My grandma, she's such a sweet lady. Oh God, I miss her little self and her cheeks. She had fat cheeks. Anyway, sorry. My grandma had a saying she transposed to us, her grandchildren, and to this day, honestly, I never cease in forgetting it because it is such a true and simple gem. She said to me, and I remember when I was in college, it was so resounding. She said to me, "If the thing is wrong, don't do it." To this day, that has never ever left me. I probably need to put that on a t-shirt or something, or in a mug. As simple as it is, it's true. But then again, as true as it is, sometimes it's difficult. But if we allowed our inward self to commit to doing the just things and being responsible for the actions that we disseminate, I oftentimes wonder if we'd be living in a better human experience. And like I said, I know that it may be easier said than done because, I think what the issue is fear. I think that's what it comes down to, because fear can be very crippling, and especially when the so-called cards are not dealt in our favor, we tend to lean into the things that usually are not sent by God. And it's usually in the midst of all the chaos that is sent by the enemy, because chaos does not come from God. Quote me on that. It's usually in the midst of chaos that is usually sent by the enemy that accountability goes right through the window, and probably not until we get caught or caught up. But usually not until we get caught, that is when we seem to confess. That's when we seem to, it's like our backs are against the wall, we have no choice. Some people, hey, them take it to them grave. Some people willing to, go home to God sooner than it's I don't know, God ready for you at any point in time. But some people have that notion that I taking this to my grave and there's no way, possible, shape or form you will get me to say that I did this or didn't do this. Some persons are actually like, I've seen movies that demonstrate that. God's word, though, it tells us that we should confess our sins one to another, but most importantly, we should confess those sins to Him. How many of us express our inner secrets or shortcomings to God, to our families and friends, more controversially to even our enemies? No, sir, what I company like? No, that's Stephie, all right. We not good. Like, run up in an enemy territory and I tell it no. But how many of us truly sit down and express our shortcomings? I bet you can't even say that you do. We don't even go to God with it because of what He may think or how shamed we are, not realizing that He is all-knowing. He's all-knowing. He can see as clear as the day He created the earth exactly what we're up to. We're under His microscopic lens. Being accountable to God is first and foremost the obedient way, as He yearns for us to seek Him first. If we submit to Him, which is something I'm learning to do daily. I'm not even going to sit here and cap on this internet and pretend like I have it all together. But if we truly submit to Him daily, if we allow God to order our steps, we'd be almost perfect in His sight. And the ways in which we should progress would be so much easier to stand before Him on the day of judgment. I can only imagine that those of you listening sometimes get annoyed in listening to my podcast week after week because it may not be as controversial and attention grabbing. But I have to remain true to the purpose instilled in me by God to commit to making the life I'm living and experiencing simultaneously with each and every single one of you more meaningful. I have to hold myself accountable in that regard. That's how I remain accountable to God and myself. And to the many other beautiful gems I share this space with. After all, there are many platforms that cover enough of the world's controversies, and I respectfully choose not to add to it. Alright, that's me. And that's just one example, mind you. In several instances, we deflect and excuse ourselves from actions either we commit or committed by others that we are aware of. In criminology, like if you watch Law and Order, that's known as being an accessory to the crime. And in fact, even if our physical selves never get caught, you know that it actually catches up with us sooner or later in our conscience. Our conscience, if we have one, and I hope that we all do, that should be like a navigating compass. It tends to keep us up at night. Or sound asleep. Some persons sleep through all them fast and like it does nothing to them. They sleep soundly. So, but even though there's a Jamaican saying that if you not catch call me, you catch him short or something to that effect, it may not happen to us. And I think sometimes what we don't take into consideration and hold accountable is that it may fall in the generation to come, you know. You ever sometimes stop and ponder like, how is it that we're in a certain experience that seems to be so insufferable? You ever stop and wonder that, you know, maybe it was the generation prior? Because past actions tend to rear itself in future contexts one way or the other. Some may refer to it as karma, but hey, today's episode is about accountability, so I refer to it as accountability. But it's incumbent to do the work for ourselves, to be better for ourselves and our future generation. Be conscious, mindful and respectful of the decisions we exercise that may or may not result in consequences we desire, or vice versa. Think to yourselves just for a moment. Just for a moment. Follow me now. Just think to yourself just for a teeny tiny moment. I need to be very careful because I want to, at the end when I'm really listening, I ensure that I'm maintaining accountability for myself. Okay, yeah. Think to yourselves of a moment. And think to yourself, how do you present yourselves among the masses? How do you present, meaning I, so you can replace it with I. How do I present myself among other human beings experiencing this life? That's how you initiate being accountable. How do I present myself among other human beings experiencing this life with me? And be honest. Ask yourself, am I fair and just? Am I loving or kind? Am I respectful or honest? Am I sincere and gracious? Am I thoughtful or obedient? Am I disciplined or patient? How do I share this experience with others? That's what we need to ask ourselves on a daily basis. How do I protect other person's peace as I would mine? Am I the healed and accountable version of myself that God needs me to be for His kingdom work and His people? In most of these answers, I'm pretty sure you're probably saying no. And if you are saying no, it simply means that you have work to do. Likewise, myself, I tell you that, on a daily basis, I truly try to upend and uphold being accountable to God. I make sure that I confess first of all, I love to sleep. Okay, I really love to sleep. So I make sure to confess nightly. I want sound, peaceful rest. I don't want to go by the cold hands of death knowing that, I failed to do my due diligence in confessing and being accountable to God. No way. So if most of the answers are no, definitely have work to do. If most of the answers are yes, you still have work to do. You have the work to do to continue to maintain accountability and to ensure that you're holding yourselves accountable for the work that you are actually doing. So if the thing is wrong, don't do it. If the thing is right, remain responsible in your calling to champion the call for a more meaningful life. Accept responsibility for the part you play or don't play in an experience worthy of your calling. Refrain from gaslighting or victim playing or victim blaming in your own behaviors. Own your wrongs and starve your fears. Do not put down any of God's creations for furtherance of your own understanding, because you ain't supposed to be leaning onto your own understanding in the first place. And remember Romans 14 verse 12. So then, Each of us will give account of ourselves to God. So do not believe you're pardoned in the earthly experience of life in how you treat his own. God don't play about his kids. God will never cease in forgetting how you treat his own. So be very careful of the actions you choose to exude in this your borrowed life. Be careful and be accountable one to another. Now I close with encouraging you to take a listen to a song that I've been recently playing. It is called Able, and I think that is so fitting. The song is called Able by Jonathan McReynolds. So if you're struggling to be accountable in areas of your life that you within your heart of hearts, in your mind, body and soul, you're asking God to help you with sincerely, let this be your anthem for the rest of the day. Thank you all for listening to today's episode. And as per usual, peace and love and light. And I'll remain accountable in seeing you all in the next episode. Bye everybody.